What is the worst adult temper tantrum you have seen? In grade 8, the foods, cooking. Teacher lost her crap in because my group's kitchen couldn't find the right sized mixing bowl. She went through our entire kitchen, frantically opening every single drawer, as though a large mixing bowl would be hiding with the cutlery. She screamed at us for losing this precious mixing bowl, as though we stole her wedding ring and flushed it down the toilet. The rest of the class stopped making cookies to watch this short, fat French Canadian woman doing her impression of an angry tornado while shouting in Franglish. Just as she was about to burst into tears, a kitchen group across the class found the mixing bowl. Turns out someone accidentally placed it in the wrong kitchen. A week later she shouted at us for an entire class because she found a grey hair in another class's brownies. It was pretty obvious it was her hair. I had a teacher that taught French who acted like this. Finally got fired after hitting an autistic kid who was causing a fuss. I saw a grown woman yelling at her 15-year-old son because she told him he could get anything off of the menu and he happened to pick one of the more expensive meals, and I heard her go, "I can't believe this. You kids think I'm made of money. You kids are going to kill me." My chest hurts just arguing about this. He responded by saying something like, "Well then you shouldn't argue. Next time just say sorry and you can't afford it," and she blew up even more. She blew up more because she knew her kid was right. I told a lady that I couldn't return her 45-pound bag of dog food that was probably 75% gone. She started screaming that the customer is always right and continued to scream it until we had to ask her to leave. I wish people understood what this saying means. It means that companies that don't cater to the customer will lose business and this will be reflected in the profits. It doesn't mean that you can walk into a place of business and make any ridiculous demand you want. My friend's husband let the air out of my tire because he was mad I was at their house. Didn't really think that one through. I kicked a girl out of my store for repeatedly passing out on the ice cream freezer in between trying to shoplift items from my store. This didn't make her too happy. She repeatedly called me a bee in the voice of what I can only call an eagle on sea and told me she wasn't doing anything wrong. Eventually she hit me and ended up getting an assault charge. Guy bought tickets to a movie and the theater had reserved seating. When you buy the tickets, you choose the seat. The seat's number is printed on the ticket. He decides he doesn't like the seats he's chosen, so he goes and sits somewhere else. Problem is though, the seats were sold to someone else and they came in and asked him to move. The guy refused. They call us in, the managers, and the guy throws a massive temper tantrum in the middle of the theater, complaining, bitching and whining about why he can't just stay there. We explained to him multiple times about the reserved seating, and he wasn't having any of it. We had to call the cops to get him out because he was screaming at the managers and threatening to fight other people in the theater because they were telling him to GTFO. When the police came in to remove the guy, the entire theater applauded. Probably one of the most ridiculous things I've dealt with. I was at my local comic book store a few months ago. I was browsing and picking up some new books. While I was browsing, a middle-aged woman and a senior gentleman were shopping there together. The senior man, presumably her father, kept saying the comic books were expensive here and that she can only pick a certain number. The middle-aged woman started to tantrum in the middle of the store saying, "I warned you this was going to be an expensive week. I need all the issues so I don't fall behind. I told you to save money for this. I need them." The man kept saying, "No, they're expensive. Pick a couple and we're leaving," and the woman kept sobbing, screaming and stomping her feet saying, "I told you to save money. I need them all. I told you they were expensive," over and over. I couldn't believe my eyes. I worked at a grocery store on Boylston St. During the Boston Marathon bombings. Store was closed for an entire week, as the street was considered a crime scene. The day before we reopened, we were then, and finally then, allowed to enter the store to get rid of the thousands and thousands of dollars of spoiled food, due to the store being shut and the power being cut. We had hardly any perishable food. We got some things from another store, I believe, because, you know, crime scene. Cue woman freaking out for far too long about us not having the salad she wanted, the pre-made, crap butt salad, yelling about us having poor customer service, about how we can't do our jobs, that we're obviously being overpaid for our lack of effort at our jobs. She told someone to go back to school. Cue my manager basically saying there were bombings a week ago. People died. Your salad is irrelevant. Woman goes red, obviously forgetting she was on the street of the crime scene and we had a more than reasonable excuse for lack of products. Shamefully, woman leaves. Customers cheer. Many years ago, when my sister and I were in high school, our dad was driving us home from the mall and stopped at Subway to get our mom a sandwich. It was a really nice day out, so my sister and I rolled down the windows and chatted while we waited for dad to come out. All of a sudden the Subway door flies open and this lady comes storming out with her boyfriend in tow, ranting about they can't treat you like that and generally acting unhinged while her boyfriend tried to calm her down. I really wanted to make a snide comment about it to my sister, but they were standing like 5 feet from our car, the windows were rolled down, and I was afraid this lady would attack me if she heard me say it. A couple of minutes later dad comes out with mom's sandwich. I ask him what that was all about, and he says that the cashier had politely asked the boyfriend to stop swearing as there were children in the room, and the lady had flipped out and started screaming and breaking things. When I worked at Panera Bread, this lady kept trying to get her food for free by saying that she was given the wrong order the night before but didn't have any evidence to back it up. After a co-worker explains that we need evidence, she proceeds to call him a monkey butt N-word even though she was black and repeats it over and over again until we kick her out. This happened on my first day. Safe to say I was given a pretty good impression of the place. I love when crap happens. We had a lady just like that at Pizza Hut, except she would try to return the pizza half eaten and expect a refund. We finally blacklisted that bee. I was at GameStop looking around when a guy probably between 40 and 50 came in wanting a refund on a game he had. The employees told him they couldn't take it back since it was scratched up and cracked. The guy proceeded to yell at them and how they are failures in life and he demands a refund and they must give it to him. He even threw the case of the game at them. He was quickly kicked out. Oh man. The things you see working at a pharmacy. People are entitled to their time. I understand. But when I tell you we ran your prescription through the insurance and it saved you money so your copay is $11, please do not rage at me for the price. That's not my fault. And if I had 5 other customers in line before you, don't rant that you waited 5 whole minutes at the drive-thru and waste even more time. I apologize and empathetically respond, but that's just not enough sometimes. People make me question why they live so angrily. I've witnessed a number of parents having meltdowns at Disney World and yelling at their children for being, gasp, children. If your toddler is a bit cranky at 10 PM from you dragging them around a park for 12 hours for the 5th day in a row to the point where you as the adult can't keep yourself together, you're vacationing wrong. Throwing a tantrum at your 3 years old who is up way past their bedtime is not going to turn their behavior into that of a well-rested mature adult. My boss lost her crap on a waitress because she ordered wine and it came in one of those new trendy stemless glasses. Refused to drink wine out of a glass without a stem. The restaurant had only one kind of wine glass. We left without eating. Sounds like a nice person to work for. I used to work at Logan Airport during the whole liquid ban. I told some guy he couldn't bring his soda through security. He proceeds to go on a giant tirade against government interference and that I was somehow personally responsible for taking all his freedoms away. He then proceeded to yell that he had a bomb. He was swiftly tackled. To clarify a few things, I didn't work for that SAR, so stop calling me crappy names. I work checking people in for United. This guy started heading towards security with his soda, so I reminded him that he couldn't bring it through and that security would take it away. That's when the whole thing started, and he was tackled by the soldiers we had patrolling at that time. Well, that was a wrong answer. His chances of getting on the plane dive bombed. My wife and I were on our way back from our honeymoon in Hawaii when we saw a double tantrum at the airport. An older, 60s, man threw a tantrum, grumbling, arguing etc. when Sir had the audacity to make him take off his shoes and patted him down. After getting through security, his wife was so traumatized that she broke down sobbing and said, "You're ruining the whole vacation," then continued to cry for the next 15 minutes while her husband sat next to her with a kill me expression on his face. Of course, my wife and I say you're ruining the whole to this day. Humorously, of course. Witnessing other people's tantrums and using them as an inside joke afterwards is one of my favorite pastimes. A girl I used to work with got a surprise gift from her mom, which was a brand new vehicle. She went outside to look at it and came stomping back in because she bought a standard. She ended up swearing and brutally cutting down her mom in front of everyone. I was in Hong Kong and late for a flight to Thailand. There was a guy at the gate desk banging on the desk and demanding that he get on a flight to Thailand, or else. Me and my travel friend were also late, but didn't care. We ended up on a flight to Thailand through Emirates Airlines and sweet assed first class and a 90% empty airplane. Dickface yellow McBang, the desk didn't make the cut. A guy I was behind in the store here was screaming at his mom on the phone about some money she had apparently put aside for his college, but he was getting free college through the military, so I guess she was going to use it on something else. The worst of it was when he started throwing his free hand out yelling how she had saved that money for him so he should spend it how he wants. I feel sorry for his mom. She has to put up with having him as a son. I can't stand people who feel entitled for what isn't theirs. The money his mother parents put away for his college fund is not his. He didn't work for the money, but he thought he was owed it. God, so many stories from my retail days. I got to watch a former NFL player, one who was actually fairly well known in the late 90s, freak out and throw a tantrum in the middle of Best Buy when he didn't want to wait in line, which was 2 people long. Yelled for a manager until one came up. Screamed at the manager about how his time was too valuable to be wasted waiting in line, pulled the "do you know who I am" card, and started screaming again when the manager told him that we weren't going to do anything to compensate him for the problem. The incident ended with him gathering up his posse of children, screaming that we'd be hearing from his lawyer, and leaving. Also that he could go around 2 people. Then, a couple years later, he was arrested for snorting see-off of a toilet in a nightclub. So, that explains a lot. Worked at a very small niche magazine publishing company as an editorial assistant during college. My editor was the sweetest, most polite, middle-aged gentleman I'd ever met. We all got along great and he really was a joy to work for. He reminded me of Mr. Rogers with a southern drawl. Once, the day before an issue was headed to press, our publisher changed the entire focus of the issue, requiring a significant rework and an all-nighter by this editor and a few others. He tried to stay quiet and just sit there brooding, but old Mr. Rogers lost it. He stood up and kicked his plastic trash bin across the office and then, swearing the whole time, walked up to the publisher's desk. He didn't have an office, we were all in his same room, and used his hands to knock every single thing off his desk. No one even said anything, we all just watched in horror amusement. He ended up taking a walk to cool off and everything blew over, but we never let him forget about it. Hey, most other retail work is probably just as bad as pharmacy. Once had a dude try to return an electric beard trimmer through the pharmacy drive-thru during peak business hours. Like, excuse me sir, this is not Burger King. You cannot have it your way. I was about 11 or 12 when gas prices were higher than $2 a gallon, saw 2 women almost exchange fisticuffs over who could get to the gas pump first when prices were low at one gas station. I had never seen anyone do more than complain that prices went up. Yeah, I know. First world problem. Maybe it was a flashback to the gas shortage of the 1970s, because they were definitely old enough to have experienced it, and definitely old enough to know they should just take turns. This happened to a friend. She had cut someone off while driving to work in the morning, didn't think twice about it. About 10 minutes later, when waiting to make a left turn onto a busy street off a side street, she noticed in her rearview mirror that the car she had cut off had followed her and stopped behind her while she was stuck waiting for traffic to let her turn. Beefy, tatted guy got out of his car with a knife, shaking his head in anger. He sliced both her back tires, got back in his car and drove off. I really want a big neon sign in the back of my car that says sorry connected to a button on my dash. That might just pee people off even more though. Was vacationing in Banff while there were US forest fires happening. This unfortunately caused smoke to obscure a lot of the view. Lady was yelling at the girl working the motel desk about why this was happening. Absolutely unreal. She seemed to have no control over herself, yet expected the worker to control the weather. I was working the graveyard at a gas station and two guys walk in. Well, one decided to try and be slick and grab a pack of smokes and run. Unbeknownst to him, one door was locked and he runs straight into it, which obviously alerted me to what was going on. I come out to find him out cold on the floor. His buddy meanwhile decides to berate me for not leaving the other door unlocked. Goes completely batshit. Throws ice all over the place. Proceeds to throw icy cups full of Pepsi Freeze all over the floor, and smashes 2 of my bottles of Grey Goose. Finally he pauses and asks, "You're not gonna call the cops, are you?" To which I said, "Of course not, look outside." We were a substation, and his face just drops. 2 county cruisers rolled in mid-tantrum after I hit the panic button. His tantrum cost us several thousand in property and damaged goods, but seeing him and his buddy get cuffed and the satisfaction I felt that night, priceless. A now former co-worker on her last day of work was full on screaming at our HR director on the phone saying, "I have to do my mileage form but my supervisor told me I had to leave 5 minutes ago." She went mental and legit hung up the phone and ran out of our office without bringing any of her personal belongings. Now apparently she is trying to sue the company for improper training or some BS. I was driving down the interstate one day, and a sedan cut in front of a van. One of those wood-paneled vans with the curtains in the back window. It was rude, but it was also rush hour traffic, and really nothing harmful. In response, the van swerved in front of me, and sped up so the passenger window was alongside the sedan. Traveling at about 75 miles per hour, the driver of the van inched as close as possible to the sedan. A woman leaned out the passenger window, and not just shoulders, but her entire upper half. She was shaking her fists and flipping the bird, screaming at the top of her lungs, waving her arms and throwing garbage at the sedan. I saw several full XL cups of soda, an ashtray, full, a small trash can, also full, and more. This continued for about a mile, until the van took off. Used to work for an ISP as an internet troubleshooting tech back in college. We gave customers modems that had routers built in. They were garbage tbh, but we also gave them the option to use their own router and we would bridge it for them, etc. But if they had issues with their router, they were on their own, for obvious reasons. Had a lady that couldn't remember her Wi-Fi password. Since it was her router, I had no idea what it was. I told her most routers will allow you to factory reset them and it would default the password back to the password on the sticker on the router. The whole "I'm not a computer person" thing followed and she wanted me to roll a truck. The tantrum she threw when I told her we would be unable to roll a truck because she forgot the password to her own equipment and refused to put any effort into helping me help her was out of this world. That job really makes me hate being human. When I got fired from a family-friendly restaurant, unfair reasons, but it doesn't matter much anymore. The 2 co-owners were very formal and I accepted the termination as gracefully as terminations come. But then the owner's wife opened her mouth. She started screaming about how I was sleeping with co-workers and I didn't follow their good wholesome Christian values and I was a W and such. Funny when none of it was true. When I brought up the fact I wasn't actually sleeping with co-workers, she got red in the face and continued yelling, spitting in my face and waving her arms around dramatically. It only got worse when I said it wasn't quite appropriate for them to make us pray before meetings and force their religious views on their employees either. At that point her husband comes in to defend their actions and I just walked out, eyes rolling. On the plus side, you're out of there. Sounds like a miserable place run by miserable people. Best Buy. Customer wanted to return a computer he had bought 2 years ago. Culminated in him screaming so loud the entire store heard him, throwing the box containing the computer monitor peripherals on the ground and storming out. Happy birthday to the ground. I was in the Apple store recently and some lady showed up an hour after her scheduled appointment and they wouldn't take her right away. She absolutely lost IT. The poor girl telling her that she has to wait for one of the workers to free up was getting killed. The woman was mocking her sentences in a baby voice like a child. Props to the manager who was having none of her crap and told her to GTFO. My mom had basically a psychotic break after being on steroids for a few weeks for a chest infection. She's barely stable at the best of times. I sat at the kitchen table while she ranted and raved for a few hours. The topics included how I'd brought all these people into our lives because I see a therapist and a psychiatrist and her mocking me for having a disability. After she trapped me in a corner of the room and wouldn't let me leave, I was about to call 911 to put an end to it when she finally stopped. About 15 years ago, I was at Arby's with my dad, a morbidly obese man, legitimately the fattest person I've ever seen in my life, who espoused all the terrible stereotypes about morbidly obese people. Long grease-stained shirt that looked unwashed, sweatpants and long gross hair. Screaming Saint the girl behind the counter because he ordered 2 extra large curly fries and not 1. I can still see the spittle from his mouth when I think about Arby's. He's probably dead by now. Was on a flight that got cancelled, so I was waiting in line with everybody else trying to get a seat on the next flight out. I was kind of resigned to my fate and figured I'd get stuck overnight or something. The guy in front of me was just fuming and muttering to himself, and when he got to the front of the line he laid into the poor woman, red-faced and sputtering, swearing at her as if she'd cancelled the flight herself. She waited patiently until he slowed down and said, "I'm sorry sir, there's nothing I can do. There are no more seats available. You'll have to wait on standby on tomorrow morning's flight." He swore some more and stormed off, calling her all kinds of names. I was up next and sorta rolled my eyes and said I was sorry she had to deal with that, and said, "So I guess I need to wait until tomorrow morning?" She looked around to see if he was gone and said, "No, I have 1 seat left, in first class. It's all yours. Have a nice flight. Never be a dong to the gate agent." A former roommate. It was her birthday and her mother would always bake her a cake. Something came up that year and she did not get a cake. Roommate absolutely freaking lost it. No amount of telling her we'd make her one if she shut up and stopped being a bee to everyone because she did not get a cake. Nothing worked. I barely get a happy birthday from my own parents. Frick. If I want a cake I have to buy one myself. It's just a fricking birthday. Oh, and she was in her 30s. Frick you Stacy. First kick-off meeting with a new client with a bunch of the department heads and their underlings. Probably 12-15 people in the room. 5 minutes into the meeting, which started at 8 AM, Department Head A gets into it with Department Head B. A very terse exchange occurs. After an awkward few seconds, we try to continue the meeting. B throws out one last comment which pisses A right the frick off. He tells B to frick off and leaves the room, slamming the door hard. It was so theatrical I was convinced they were playing a prank on us and A was going to come back in a minute laughing and we'd go on with the meeting. But nope. Another extended awkward silence, and then right when we tried to start again, A calls his underling who's still in the meeting and demands she leave too. That was an interesting project. I work at a car dealership. We had a customer come in that didn't want to pay his diagnostic fee. I was the cashier at the time, so I got a service writer who proceeded to tell the customer that he had to pay the fee because that's how the technician gets paid, feeds his family. The guy had signed the work order approving the $99 to work on the car. Well, he tried denying that his was his signature and then called the police. Then he started arguing with me over it and called me a $10 employee and that I don't run the place. The dude was a complete butthole. The cops show up and talk to the manager and customer. You can tell the cop was siding with us but told us we couldn't legally withhold his car despite not getting paid for the service. They escort the guy out, but both the service and sales managers yell at him that they're going to sue him and to never come back. It's nice to have managers that don't let customers get away with bulls even if nothing came of it. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.